Hello, everyone, and welcome to Slash Film Daily for Monday, September 16th, 2019. On today's episode, we're going to talk about the latest film and TV news, and I'm going to bring you, in our feature presentation, a Q&A with Joker director Todd Phillips and star Joaquin Phoenix. This is Slash Film Editor-in-Chief Peter Sciretta, and joining me on today's podcast is Slash Film Weekend Editor Brad Oman.
Hey, that's me.
And Senior Writer Ben Pearson.
Hey, what's going on?
Well, we had Friday off. We'll talk about that tomorrow in the water cooler. But let's dive into the news because we got a couple things to talk about before we get into this interview. Let's first start with the Funko movie. They're making a movie based on the popular Funko Pop figures. Warner Brothers is doing this, and they have some incredible Pixar and Disney filmmakers on board. Brad, tell us about it.
Indeed, the Funko movie was set up at Warner Animation Group earlier this year, and it sounds like it's making some progress moving forward, because we've just heard that Teddy Newton and Mark Dindal will be directing this animated motion picture. Teddy has a background from Pixar as the writer and director of their short Day and Night. He also worked on designing characters for The Incredibles and Ratatouille, and in 2D animation, he also was a storyboard artist for The Iron Giant. So he's obviously somebody Brad Bird trusts quite a bit. And then Jindal, he was at the helm of both The Emperor's New Groove and Chicken Little, which aren't necessarily part of Disney's heyday in animation, but they're not necessarily bad movies either. So they're both working together to tackle this one, and yeah, that's pretty much all we know for now. Previously, we had heard when this story wasn't entirely official that the movie would feature a variety of different franchises, much in the same way that the Lego movie did. And at the time when the story first surfaced back in January, it was said some of the characters would include Wonder Woman, the Care Bears, Hellboy, Deadpool, Hello Kitty, Harley Quinn, Darth Vader, and My Little Pony. So not all of those are Warner Brothers entities, obviously, and there'll probably be even more that are included because Funko has their hands in tons of different licenses for a wide variety of movies, TV shows, and video games. It just depends on which rights Warner Brothers is probably able to lock down to appear in this movie. After all, when the Lego movie came out, we didn't really see any Marvel characters popping up. It was all DC Comics superheroes, which is probably to Warner Brothers' advantage and probably choice. But so hopefully we'll see a wider variety this time. Again, since it's Warner Brothers, I can't imagine we'll see Marvel characters popping up unless they work something out with Disney and Marvel. But there are plenty of franchises to choose from to bring a wide variety of characters into this movie. But I'm left wondering whether or not we really need this. And we also said the same thing about the Lego movie, but you can't capture lightning in a bottle twice.
But I feel like the Lego movie is the one thing that everybody uses as the example of like, oh, we can do a Play-Doh movie now because the Lego movie works. So there's a way to do this, right?
Yeah, and I don't. We don't really know what the story is yet, so it's tough to say. But I'm very skeptical about this one.
I think the fun thing here would be that clash of all these properties that don't exist with one IP holder, and Funko is the way to put them together. Like, I know Funko recently started launching these board games, which you can buy these different figures. Basically, each board game comes with a different map and different figures from that world. So I think there's like a Batman one, and then there's like a Golden Girls one, and there's whatever. And eventually, if you buy them all, you can like fight the Golden Girls versus Batman and stuff like. It's like a mega mashup.
Finally, the Golden Girls versus Batman movie I've been waiting for.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's beside the point. But I think the fun here is that Pop could be the gateway into having a fun mashup of characters from across the movie and TV and pop culture landscape.
Sure, but that sounds like something that's more fun for like a video game or a board game like they're creating, rather than a feature film with that needs a good narrative.
True. I will say this, Teddy Newton, I've loved his work. If you search Teddy Newton art on Google and go into images, you'll see a lot of the art that he created for The Incredibles. He just has like a fantastic eye for things, and I know Brad Bird has credited him with a lot of like the aesthetic and cleverness of just even concepts. I think The whole raccoon thing in Incredibles 2 was Newton, I think. I could be wrong there. So I don't know. I'm a fan of him. He was also developing a movie. He was going to direct a movie, and he was developing a script with Derek Connolly, who co-wrote or wrote Jurassic World. And that was going to be at Pixar. I wonder what happened to that. But that is a nice transition into our next story, which is Jurassic World short film, which premiered over the weekend, Battle of Big Rock. It premiered on TV. We talked about this last week, and I think we've all watched it at this point. So, Ben, what did you think of this short film?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting, and as we were talking about last week, we speculated a lot about Jurassic World 3, which is coming to theaters in 2021, and how maybe that movie might not have enough time to really get into and engage with the premise of the cliffhanger ending of Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, which basically ends with dinosaurs being set free in America. And this short, which we talked about, it's like 8 minutes long. It's online in its entirety. You can check it out at slashfilm.com right now. Is all about. It's a very short story about this family who's camping, and dinosaurs sort of attack or show up at their campsite and start attacking the people there. So it's one of those things where it's like I appreciate the willingness to engage with a concept that they may not have enough time to really get into in the full sequel, the full movie, because we've heard that Sam Neill, Laura Dern, and Jeff Goldblum may be coming back to reunite in Jurassic World 3, and then you've also got Chris Pratt and Bryce Dallas Howard and all the other characters in the Jurassic World franchise that are still around. So yeah, it's easy for me to imagine a case where that story is already pretty jam-packed without being able to spend the time on a small family just capitalizing on this concept. So I think the short is pretty good. Trevorrow co-wrote it with Emily Carmichael. He's co-writing the script for the new movie with her as well, and he directed this. I don't know. I thought it was like pretty good for what it was.
Yeah, and if you want to see it, if you're listening to this, I'll link it in the show notes. You can watch it on slashfilm.com. I thought it was great. It was a fantastic, small scale thriller, but it has some big scale dinosaur VFX. It's it reminds me a lot of that scene from Lost World where they're in that van, the big
the RV.
Yeah, RV. It is the best moments of those kind of thrilling moments from the first two Jurassic Park movies. And I kind of wonder though, the story doesn't. It's a great short film, and I advise everybody to watch it. And I love there's some after credit stuff that's fun and shows kind of how this world has changed after the effects of Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. I advise everybody go check this out. But this story doesn't really move along the story of this franchise much. It's kind of like a small scale episode in the world, which makes me wonder, why was this created? Was this really just created to promote an airing of Jurassic World on TV, or was this what was the thinking behind this? Are they thinking about doing more short films? Is it maybe is Universal maybe worried about having Colin Trevorrow direct this third installment of Jurassic World, and this is his proving point? I mean, I think if it is a proving ground, he proved his point. I think this is pretty awesome. Brad, what did you think?
Yeah, I like this short a lot, actually. I'd be willing to go so far as to say that this is better than almost the entirety of Jurassic World and Fallen Kingdom. It has that spirit of the original Jurassic Park and and the finer parts of the Lost World. It has great suspense. It makes you care about the dinosaurs that are being hunted by the carnivore. It has that new herbivore. The name of the dinosaur is drawing a blank for me, but it gets attacked by an Allosaurus. And having a family at the center of it makes it much more interesting than the characters that are at the center of the Jurassic World movies. And not only is the cast in this great, but the kids help out too. Especially, I like little moments here when the Allosaurus attacks the little baby herbivore and is getting close to killing it, and the kids are like, oh no, they're genuinely worried about it. So it's just little, just kind of moments like that bring humanity back to Jurassic Park, and I think that's what's been missing from the recent two installments of the franchise.
And there's some cleverness there with like the kid strapped into like the what is it called,
the high chair,
yeah, and that putting him in danger.
But yeah, it's a really cool short. It's very well done, and I think probably its existence is much like Ben said. It seems like they needed some way to maybe help bridge the gap between Fallen Kingdom and Jurassic World to kind of give an audience an idea of the world in which we'll join the franchise again back when the third movie comes out. Because I feel like by the time we get to the third movie, it'll probably be much in the same vein of the time that passed between like Apes movies, where a lot has changed in the period of time between those movies, and maybe they wanted to give the audience a taste of some of the things that they probably won't get a vibe for, because by the time we get to Jurassic World 3, people will be maybe used to dinosaurs already existing in the wild. Because even in this short, the way they're talking about it is like they know that they're out there, but it's just a matter of how far they've gotten and where they're at. So I think it's just meant to kind of set the stage for what's to come for the third movie.
I feel like what I'm skeptical about is like this short film could have easily been the opening stinger for like the next movie. Do you know what I mean?
Maybe they have a better stinger though, which is why they're doing this.
Oh yeah, that's also possible. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe they wrote this for that, and then they came up with a better idea. And like Universal was like, why don't we make they pitched it to Universal, and why don't we make a short? I don't know. We don't know. But one thing to come out of this is Colin Trevorrow gave an interview with Empire and revealed that he once met with Marvel Studios for a little film called Guardians of the Galaxy. Ben, what do we know?
Yeah, he basically at a live podcast taping with Empire, he said, I met on Guardians of the Galaxy long, long ago, very early. It was a great conversation. I was not a comic book kid. That wasn't my thing. I was a Star Wars kid, an Indiana Jones kid, a Spielberg kid. That was my thing. So it was a great conversation, but a little more of a personal understanding of you need someone who loved this growing up. They should be the ones directing these movies. You've got to live it and breathe it in the same way that I did Jurassic and these films that I get to be involved in now. So it sounds like he was one of a few people that came in to meet with Marvel about potentially directing Guardians. Some of the other high-profile people to meet for that job were Peyton Reed, who went on to direct Ant-Man, and Anna Boden and Ryan Fleck, who eventually directed Captain Marvel. So, Colin Trevorrow potentially stepping into the Marvel world, but it sounds like, by his own admission, he just didn't have the connection with the material that somebody like James Gunn did, and it's really hard to imagine this iteration of the Guardians without James Gunn's personal touch all over it.
Well, it's also good to have a filmmaker realize that, because I feel like a lot of people, like someone like him who loves Star Wars and comes to that, like, might like be like, oh, this is a way for me to do a backwards edition of like Star Wars that doesn't, do you know what I mean? Like it's a way to do that, and like to realize that you just don't, you don't have a love for that property. I mean, I'm sure he went in and pitched it anyways, but James Gunn got the job, and I'm kind of glad, because I can't imagine what a Colin Trevorrow Guardians of the Galaxy movie would look like. Brad, what would it look like?
I probably like Colin Trevorrow more than most. He's a very nice guy, and I think he's been dealt kind of a bad hand as far as becoming this poster child for a director that's been handed.
Brad, I was setting you up for a joke about Gamora and high heels, but you didn't go for it.
Oh no, I didn't want to be mean.
I know. Okay. Let's move on to our last story for today. Kevin Feige, speaking of him in Marvel Studios, he won an award at the Saturn Awards and revealed that there's a new Infinity Saga box set coming out that will unleash the Marvel Vault. Brad, what is the Marvel Vault?
The Marvel Vault is something that apparently exists, and it will be opened to unleash some new material that will be released as part of an Infinity Saga box set that Kevin Feige says is coming sometime later this year. They've shot 23 movies now, and Kevin Feige says that they have, done enough, that they have a lot of scenes that they haven't revealed to the public, that haven't been put out on Blu-ray or DVD for any of these movies, and it's stuff that they feel comfortable enough that they can release. It's funny, because this is something that he talked about quote unquote, hypothetically, back in August when he was making the PR rounds for Avengers Endgame, he was talking to Empire, and he had said if we do a big giant Infinity Saga box set, that they might include some bad scenes that otherwise might turn Marvel fans off of the movie, to be like, ugh, what are they doing? But they have so much goodwill now that really they can release some of this stuff that may be a little bit more embarrassing. And he does say it's stuff that they thought nobody should ever see, and so they're going to be releasing some of the stuff. And the comparison he made is kind of interesting because he's like, there's some stuff that still pops up from the Star Wars trilogy occasionally, like that sequence that happens at Tashi Station with Luke and some of his friends. And it sounds like that some of these sequences are going to be like that. And to tease what some of these sequences are, he released an alternate credit scene that they shot for Iron Man with Samuel Jackson as Nick Fury. And as we all know in that scene, that's when he tells Tony Stark that he's here to talk to him about the Avengers Initiative. But there's a line preceding that apparently was different in alternate takes. And this one is interesting because he mentions the other Marvel characters that had already been given movies at that point. Fury's opening line is, as if gamma accidents, radioactive bug bites, and assorted mutants weren't enough, I have to deal with a spoiled brat who doesn't play well with others and wants to keep all his toys to himself. And then the scene continues with the normal way where he says, Tony Stark asks, who are you? And he's like, Nick Fury, director of S.H.I.E.L.D. I'm here to talk to you about the Avenger Initiative. And Tony Stark says, what are we avenging? And Fury says, whatever the hell we want. Which is a line that doesn't really make any sense. So it's probably good that they ended up going with a different version, aside from the fact that they probably couldn't reference other superheroes that they didn't have the rights to yet. But it is interesting that he does reference Spider-Man and X-Men, since Disney ended up sharing the rights with Spider-Man for a bit until recently, and the X-Men are now back in the possession of Marvel Studios. So
it is so, like, the version that is in the actual movie is so kind of subtle and fun. This one is like so not subtle. Like it's the opposite, and it would have changed the entire 23 film. Like, if you set up that there's a world with mutants and Spider-Man at that point in time,
yeah, it changes the whole scope.
Yeah, I wonder how things would have been different if they had just chosen to take that one take into the MCU. Like that's kind of crazy.
And it's sort of interesting too, because Feige worked on a lot of those X-Men movies, and I'm wondering if, like, they, by having that dialogue there, if this was so early where they were just recording this, in case they were able to maybe work out a deal where the existing X-Men character, Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen and all of them could have, crossed over with Iron Man and potential characters like that. If that's sort of what this line reading was all about.
But Ben, you're saying that from a point of view of knowing where the Marvel Cinematic Universe ended up going. At that time, I don't think that dream was possible. Like, I mean,
I think Feige has said, like, he knew that was ultimately
really?
The goal. He knew that he wanted to make an Avengers movie, right? So, like, from the very beginning.
But I guess what I'm saying is, like, we didn't think that Spider-Man entering the MCU was, like, a thing that was possible. Like, that seemed like mind-blowing at the time that was announced.
I wonder if this was early enough where maybe they discussed the possibility of, like, maybe doing something with Fox where they, like, agree that the characters exist in the same universe, and maybe at some point they would cross over.
I do think that there's a way to vaguely mention things. Like, they probably ran that by legal. Like, you could probably, I wonder if you can say mutant. I guess now you can. But I wonder if you could say mutant in the MCU beforehand. They never said that with, what was that, in the Age of Ultron thing? They didn't say mutants, did they?
Yeah, they said enhanced.
Enhanced. So maybe they can't say mutant. Yeah, I don't know. Anyways, I'm excited to see what's in this Marvel vault and what could have been, and some of this more embarrassing footage. That's gonna be fun. But okay, let's get to our feature presentation, because this one is gonna be a little bit lengthier. I got to see Joker a few weeks back. In attendance was director Todd Phillips and star Joaquin Phoenix. And after the movie, they gave a Q&A to our small group of journalists. It was like a very small screening room. And what I'm about to play is the audio from that Q&A. We have removed a two spoiler questions and answers. What you're about to hear is pretty much spoiler free. I mean, you can pretty much assume what happens in Joker, but I don't think there's anything in here that it's more of talking about Joaquin Phoenix's approach and Phillips, like what he was going for with the script. And I think you will enjoy that because there's some interesting stuff here, especially with how Phoenix got involved with this film, because it seemed like he was very reluctant to sign on. So here I present to you a chat with Joker director Todd Phillips and star Joaquin Phoenix.
You don't have to have questions. Also, like, I find like the movie has to sit a little bit. But all right. Oh, you're gonna.
How you feeling?
Good. How are you doing?
Good. How you feeling after that? Did you dig it?
Yeah. Don't pick on Steve.
Yeah. Did you guys like it?
Yeah.
Or no, you don't have to. But it's so weird when everyone's quiet and shit, like your 8-year-olds. We're speechless.
Yeah, hard though. It's like,
Yeah, no, I know it's not like a woo. It doesn't rejoice, but did you have an emotional reaction to it?
Yeah.
It's in the middle of the credits, was all of a sudden lights on. Now let's talk.
But that's what I was sort of alluding
That's
to.
what Tom was worried about.
I find it difficult.
Right, exactly.
I find it difficult to talk immediately after a lot of films, this film in particular for me. And I found that as we've shown it to people, even when I just bring somebody to the editing room and show it to a friend, a filmmaker friend, whoever, and then you go, it's over, and then they need time a little bit to sort of process it, honestly, in a way. But, we don't have that luxury, but we're here to, we can answer stuff if you have questions. We can talk about things. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm Rob Keefe from Screen Rant. Just building on what you're saying, was that your goal from the beginning when you were thinking or pitching this idea?
The goal that you can't talk about it after.
The goal that it will have sort of a profound impact to the point where you are going to be self-reflecting.
Yeah, I mean, a little bit. I mean, not a little bit. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I always enjoy movies that are difficult to speak about right after, and you go, I want to process this a little bit. I always find those to be particularly rewarding in a way. It's not like that was a specific goal, but it's something that I always enjoy about movies, where you can't necessarily distill it down into a one-line thing really simply. So yeah, I suppose it was somewhat of a goal.
Jenna? Hey, Jenna Bush, Sci-Fi. The physicality of Arthur's character is fascinating, and I'm curious how you developed that.
What was it? What?
Well, just the sort of dance movements and the fact that when he's confident, when he's himself, he has this very different physicality than when he's sort of trapped within himself.
Well, some of the dancing we knew, right? There was the kind of the sequence where he's a clown, and then there was the dance on the steps. So I worked with the choreographer for that, but then something after working with him, Michael Arnold was his name. I just started watching a lot of videos with people dancing, movement, and it just
I think one of the
the
earliest things we spoke about was that, not to cut you off, but that Arthur had music in him, like it just existed in him. Some people that you might know personally have that feeling, and I always thought that about Arthur, but it was sort of kept in and trapped. And there was something about that evolving, but like the scene in the bathroom, which I think is like what you're getting to, where he just starts dancing, that's not in the script, that's not in the thing, that's just something that kind of evolved, and like, oh, this is a moment where we can sort of show that it's kind of fighting to get out, but I love the dancing in the movie. I think we should have more of it.
Pretty good answer. Right. Was the dancing always there?
Well, the only dancing in the script was the dancing, obviously, as a clown at the beginning, which isn't really much of a dance, it's a performance, but the dancing on the stairs was there. Yeah. Other than that, we didn't do it, but when we started talking about Arthur, we started talking about music and having music in him and that kind of thing, so.
Good to
know. Hey, I'm Jim Beveda with IGN. I was kind of struck by the period setting, the fact that it was specifically, I guess, 1981, and I'm in my mid-40s, and a lot of stuff that I kind of forgotten about growing up, about how kind of ugly a period of time it was in the late 70s to the mid-80s. if you could talk a little bit about that kind of choice of that. I had even forgotten about Zorro the Gay Blade until the origin scene.
Right, came out in 81.
Yeah, and then even like the Bernie Getz kind of thing that
Yeah.
sparks the whole thing.
Well, for us, we never say in the movie it's 1981, but we always say it's late 70s, early 80s, mainly because we don't want people to be like, wow, that car wasn't out in 1970s. Sorry, it's late 70s, early 80s.
Yeah.
But, the time, for me, the reason we said it there's a lot of reasons. One reason was to separate it, quite frankly, from the DC universe. When pitched it to Warner Brothers and handed the script in, to sort of make it clear, this isn't fucking with anything you have going on. This is like a separate universe, so much so it takes place in the past before everything else. Another reason is because tonally, the movie is very much a character study that I'm a little older than you, but same as movies we grew up on and loved. And you go, God, those movies don't get made as much anymore. They get made, these character studies, but, Social Network is a great one. There Will Be Blood is probably the best in the last 20 years, character study. But in the 70s and 80s, they were much more frequent. So in a weird way, it was also just an homage to that time. We're making a movie that feels like that why not set it there? It was not some really great thing. It was just a few reasons, and part of the reason that every filmmaker likes to do things, period, is so you don't have to deal with fucking technology in movies because it's so frustrating. Well, if they have a cell phone, that gets solved, right? So there's a bunch of reasons, but, we just like there's something else. I like the handmade feel of those movies back then, and we tried to kind of inject that, being that we were going basically no CGI, which doesn't mean none. There's obviously some world building we've done, but there's some real handmade quality to those films in the late 70s and 80s that I just always loved. I'm sure most people in this room do, that you don't feel as much nowadays.
Mike Manella from the Nerds of Color.
What? The Nerds of Color?
The Nerds of Color. I wanted to ask Joaquin, just as a viewer watching the movie, it looked like such a transformative performance. It felt like a transformative performance. One where I, just as a viewer, am assuming that you went to some very dark places to sort of capture the essence of this character, of Arthur. And I wanted to know, how deep did you get? How did you get yourself out of that?
And this is going to disappoint you. I don't think I did. I didn't go. I think honestly we had a good time. Honestly. Or I feel like either I'm going to disappoint you, or I'm going to seem like an actor that's not really committed. Like, oh, he didn't want to do it. We had a good time.
We did laugh a lot.
We laughed. I mean, that's the thing. Because I saw somebody in the elevator, and they're like, "It's really fucking intense." I was like, oh, we laugh like every day. There's nothing really to laugh at. I go, oh, we kind of are fucked up. Laughing,
like crying laughing.
Like, yeah, like every day going, this is ridiculous. So honestly, I love those stories of actors. I kind of do wish that I was that way because it sounds so cool. But I didn't have that experience.
No, but I mean, you also prepare a lot more than you probably want.
Well, whatever, but it's what you fucking do.
That's right.
What do you mean? That's what you do. It's a regular job. You know what I mean? It's like what you do for your work.
Right. I'm just saying you didn't show up and just be like, oh, I can do this. We talked a lot about it.
No, I mean, listen, I was telling my sisters the other day, we would arrive 2 hours before our call, right? Be in the fucking trailer working, and then we'd go home and we'd call each other. Well, we'd text for a couple hours.
Right.
Then get frustrated with the texting. That was just fucking call. I'd call you wouldn't answer a few times. And then I kept calling back and finally you were like, what? Right?
That's true.
So there was that.
But it was a great process for...
It was. So, I mean, it was, I think because it was inspiring, right? So whatever you put into it, it kind of gave you so much back, right?
How'd you find the laugh?
The laugh. Which one?
There's a couple. To me, there's like 3 different laughs in the movie.
I guess whatever you would deem the most iconic, fully formed laugh.
Well, really, do you remember that I auditioned myself?
Yeah.
I had you come over to audition the laugh.
That's right.
Because I didn't think I could do it.
Right.
And because you showed me some videos, right?
That's right.
So he showed me some videos of some laughs, and I thought that's really good. And he in the script it described that described the laugh being almost painful. I thought that was a really interesting way to describe laughter. And so I just kind of like, I don't know, you came into my house. I tried, and it was really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And because I spent 5 minutes trying to work it up.
Yeah.
And finally you said, you don't have to do this.
You already have the part.
I said, no, I have to do this.
Right.
I have to, because if I don't do this now, if I can't
Do it.
force
Right.
myself to find it now, then forever I'm gonna fucking puss out. I'm not gonna be able to do it.
Right.
So we did it.
And for him to summon it on the day of the shooting was always different, and sometimes he would need time to do it. Honestly, I'm talking about the affliction laugh. You know, that was to me probably, I can't speak for you, but the hardest one to do.
Mm-hmm.
There's the laugh where he's fake laughing to be one of the guys or put in the comedy club, and then there's the end in the Arkham where he's genuinely laughing at something. But the affliction laugh, I think, was probably hard to muster up. So there were times on set where it would be a little bit pacing,
there's some that were
or I
just-
would throw out a private joke to him that would turn to make you laugh about somebody on the crew or something.
I've never made fun of people on the crew.
I'm Mark Hughes with Forbes. I'm curious about.
Yeah, what are you doing?
Yeah, I have no idea.
He's got a stock up.
I was stocking the water out front, and they just let me watch. I'm curious about, for the writing and for the performance aspect of it. There's stuff in there that as far as the having a head trauma and the implication that may have. I have a family member that literally has a lot of the affliction that's in this, and it was from a head trauma as a kid. And it was. Did you actually? Was that wasn't coincidence? You also looked that up and studied all of that,
and
right?
I studied that. Quite frankly, that laugh, which could be, in people, it's afflicted in different ways. Some people cry from this, and some people laugh, and it's always at the wrong moment. Where it's always this, and it's really painful. And what we discovered was it happens from head trauma as a young person or even older. And it happens from MS. We didn't necessarily want to give Joker Arthur MS, so we went with this head trauma thing. And yeah, I mean, the movie in every way tries to be grounded in reality as much as possible. I mean, it still has a foot in the comic book world for sure. But we just kept thinking, let's put everything through a realistic lens. Like, why does he have a white face? Well, we're not going to drop him in acid. I don't know how real. While it's amazing in the comic books and Jack Nicholson and all that, it doesn't feel very real that would happen if you fell into a vat of acid. So let's come up with a realistic answer for everything, and that was one for the laugh. So yeah, we researched it. Does that make sense?
It does, but I mean, even that we don't know.
Right, we don't even know if he's putting it on. We don't know.
In some ways, there was like, as much as there was like very thorough research and answers for a lot of these things, we also, whenever we got to a point where we felt like we were coming up with a definitive reason for anything, we backed away from it. We found a way to kind of circumnavigate it a little bit, right? Because we wanted it to be.
He hates logic.
There's a moment where you even say to his mother that you told me it was an affliction, that I had a condition, but I don't.
Right.
So that
you say that's the real me, and that's an important part because you go, oh wait, it isn't. Well, like, what is this? Yeah. I mean that.
Right, and I don't think we necessarily want to answer those things for ourselves or for anyone else. I think part of like the joy of this movie is how the audience interacts with the film and what they think about the character, right?
Yeah.
And that's what was.
Yeah, I've had younger people watch the movie and just go, "This is an awesome origin story of the Joker that I would have never thought of." And then we've had other people that are more seasoned watching movies that see references or see, "Oh, well, this is reflective of what's going on today," and blah blah blah. And it's just two valid responses, And so, it's always difficult when you make a movie to define it for people because it's not your job is to make the movie and let them sort of,
I can't believe you remember those lines. How do you remember those lines?
Because they're good.
I have that. I'll remember like
Really?
every line in
Remember
this
lines
movie.
from the
probably.
I love that.
I can't believe you do that.
It's absurd.
And
I
you're
know, but
from Forbes. Normally, you interview CEOs and things.
No, just movies. That's all I do. This is all I do.
Just Wall Street.
And stock the water.
Right.
Well, the movie Wall Street.
Right.
Just
Wolf of Wall Street and Wall Street, doesn't it?
That's
That's the only movies I review. Every week I put a new review.
Review of Wolf of Wall
It gets old.
Louis here with Nuke the Fridge. Thanks for the movie. It's a bonding experience. I feel like I'm related to everyone here now.
Oh, good. That's good.
It's something great with everyone here. Is there any thought of how old Arthur is in the film?
You mean what his age is?
Yeah, what his age is. I know
Not
30 was
particularly.
pushed around because he was.
Who pushed around 30?
Wayne.
You mean because 30 with the thing? Yeah. No, we never really gave much thought to it. We just thought. And you're saying the age discrepancy between him and Bruce?
That's what we're curious about.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, again, there are people that watch this movie and go. But there are people that watch this movie people that I've shown this movie to that go, oh, I get it. And by the way, I'm not saying they're right. They go, oh, I get it. He's not the Joker. He's the inspiration for the Joker. He's somebody that inspired the Joker. And you go, oh, that's an interesting way to look. I go, why? Well, their age difference and blah, blah. I go, oh, that's interesting.
Well, that assumes he's remembering the dates correctly, and maybe he's not.
And that assumes he's remembering.
And then there's that.
So it's a lot of Jermaine's here from IO9. You're making a movie here about a lot of different things, right? It could be about, mental illness or the haves and have-nots, but so the fact that he's the Joker is almost superfluous to the whole thing. But once you make it a Joker movie, you bring in all these different expectations and the comic book history. So can you talk about sort of the positives and negatives of making a Joker movie instead of just, like you said, like a character piece of a new character you've never heard of?
I just thought it was an interesting way to tell a story. I think an interesting new approach to the comic book world. And it's funny because a lot of you guys have probably reprinted something I said in Empire where I was misquoted. I'm not going to complain. I like the writer. He wrote a great piece. Where I said we didn't take anything from the comic book world. It's actually not what I said. What I said was we didn't take anything from one particular comic. We kind of picked and chose what we liked from the kind of 80-year canon of Joker. And you say, oh, that's interesting. It was a stand-up comic. We kind of like pulled a few things that we liked. But I don't know. To us, it was, yes, could have it been called Arthur and it'd just be about a clown? Maybe. I just thought there's a new way to tell a comic book movie, and maybe I'm wrong, and let's do it as a character study. Part of what, I guess a big part of what interested me about it, more than making a movie called Arthur, was to kind of deconstruct the comic book movie a little bit. That was part of what was exciting about it to me. For him, it might be different because I know that you had a lot of reticence being in a comic book movie, and doing that kind of thing.
Did I?
I mean, I would imagine in the beginning that was just like,
I don't remember. Steve, you remember, right? We talked about it.
We did.
Yeah.
Yeah. You were. I think you were debating. Don't you remember talking about how everyone was asking you about Joker and you were being very evasive because it seemed to me like you weren't sure.
I actually already had agreed to do it when we spoke. I lied to you. No, but here, but in all fairness, but Todd says the good thing when you say, I'd never agreed to do
I was going to say, I refute that because I don't know that he ever agreed to do the movie. One day he just showed up at a wardrobe fitting. Because every day I would say, I'd go up to his house, we'd talk about the script, we'd audition the laugh, we would do all these meetings. And I'd go, all right, so? And he's like, so what? Are you in? He's like, that's not how I do this. It's like a process for me. And what are you doing on Thursday? I know. I don't really like work like that. I'm more just kind of, it just
he had to get into
thing.
the character.
Can I actually ask one quick question? So we spoke in June or July of last year. And what I gathered was you were still debating.
No. If it was July, he had already been to a wardrobe fitting.
Right,
so yeah.
I just
but here's the thing: if it was July, I mean, because I got
to New York in August 1st.
Yeah. I mean, I would have already been like
losing
seriously
weight.
Dieting.
Yeah.
I don't remember what the date was. It was when right before You Were Never Really Here came out.
Yeah. Oh, but that's not July. That's like April, isn't it?
So I'm messing up the date.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious. When did you actually decide I want to take on this role, and when did you find out? Because there must have been a day where it clicked in your brain where you're like, okay, I'm going to do it.
I found out at a wardrobe fitting. Mark Bridges called me and said, Joaquin's here. You want to come down?
I don't remember.
No, it really was never like, all right.
I was like, all right, we're doing this.
Yeah.
It really was like, well, let's go, let's
just keep exploring it, and let's look at some makeup, and and all of a sudden we're shooting. It was never like shake your hand and go, I'm in. Which a lot of actors have had that experience.
It's the decent thing to do. Decent.
He said to me at one point, he goes, I go, come on, can't you just? He said, what do you want me to do? I go, at some point I want you to say, thank you. Yes, I'm in. Right?
Yeah,
Never happened.
Never. Not even once we were done. I'm still debating whether I'm doing Venice. Hey, do you have a question? The headband, you want to say something so we can...
So I watched King of Comedy last night for the first time, changed my life. Like, so one thing I realized was like the color pattern on the clothes kind of matched the background, and I noticed that in this one too. Did you kind of do that on purpose?
We have obviously there's a nod to a few things in this movie. King of Comedy, for me, you're way younger. I saw it probably when I was your age, and changed my life as well. I just love it so much, and obviously I went to De Niro, sent him the script. He understood the kind of reference, understood the sort of flip of Rupert Pupkin to Jerry Langford. As far as the color scheme, it wasn't honestly so. In that movie, it's a little bit more direct.
Yeah.
In this, it's a little bit more random. But a lot of what we took, the curtains, for example, is a little bit of a spin on Johnny Carson's curtains. But certainly, there's a touch of King of Comedy in there. There's a touch of Network in there. There's a touch for me of Dog Day Afternoon. There's a lot of movies, all from that time we were talking about earlier, that speak to that kind of. Again, going back to like why do we set it back then? It's just to me, not that the movie's a love letter to those movies, but it's very much an homage to that.
Wow. That's fucking interesting. I wish I would have known that.
Yeah.
On something. So see, now I get to learn all about this movie.
Yeah.
Joaquin,
Thanks,
what
Joe.
did you think of
About
the
what?
movie? Have you watched it in full?
Have I seen the movie?
Yeah.
I did. What do I say? What am I? How many?
It's a hard question to answer. I think
You started it
no,
asking
he
all
came
the-
over
It's
to
not-
my
it's not.
house and watched the movie. Well, I mean, because there are many cuts. So, I mean, the first cut of this movie was 2 hours and 35 minutes. He saw that, then he came back. And right now it's 2 hours and 2 minutes, I think, with credit. So, you'd have to ask him. Right? But
I know. It's so hard because
it just sounds lame either way.
No matter what you say,
It
you're
sounds
like you sound like a fucking conceited thing,
Right.
There you have it. You can find more of all of our work at slashfilm.com and linked in the show notes. Slash Film Daily is published every weekday on iTunes, Google, Overcast, Spotify, all the popular podcast apps. Please rate and review this podcast on iTunes. Tell your friends. Spread the word. And we'll see you tomorrow.